Welcome to Disturbing the Priest. Today I'm joined by Tommy Stewart of Black Duma Records, Tommy Stewart's Direwolf as well. Also, original member of Hallows Eve. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Today we are going over the entire history of the band. I'm very excited to do this. Hallows Eve is one of the most legendary thrash metal bands ever, in my opinion. Just awesome stuff. Tommy's lighting a candle, getting ready to get into story time here. Some awesome campfire stories we're gonna dive into. And before we start, Tommy, how are you doing, man? Are you ready to dive into the band's history?
I guess there's a lot I'm not going to tell, but there's a lot I will.
Sure. Well, we aren't on air. There's no FCC we got to watch out for. So keep that in mind for sure. But obviously, there are some personal stories I understand that you
Well,
might want to take to the grave.
still friends with some of the guys and some, yeah, and I respect a couple of them a lot for what they went on and did afterwards. And some of them kind of disappeared, and there's stories that, well, they got kids and things like that. And I don't want to tell the really trash about them. I'm just
That's
not.
fair.
I take the high road a lot,
Yeah.
even at the label, at everything I do. Honestly, I take the high road a lot. Just say, that was incompetence, or that was something we just need to let go, and whatever. There's a lot of that.
Sure. And let's just jump into it. So, how did the band Warrior form?
Warrior. That was the beginning. Okay. Yeah. I always forget about Warrior all the time because but that really is integral. Is that the word? Integral. Integral.
You're
Integral.
asking the wrong person.
I oh,
Sounds right.
where are you when I need you? Anyway, it is important to the story because, okay, so we started, let's see if I can get rid of some of the fluff. There was a little bit more before that, but anyway, so I met a guy. We formed a band, called it Warrior. We're going to be heavy metal, and nobody in Atlanta at the time was heavy metal. I cannot stress enough, there was no heavy metal in Atlanta. There were no heavy metal clubs. There was not a single heavy metal band. We had you couldn't even go to the store about what we were calling heavy metal at the time. You would have to go into a store and you could find, like, say, Blue Cheer or Blue Oyster Cult or Deep Purple, or whatever. This is what we were calling heavy metal at the time. And then new wave of British metal had, begun to crank up. So anyway, it was the end of 1979. It was kind of in the middle of new wave British metal, but it's the end of 1979. We start Warrior. Literally the next month, I wrote one of the first songs I wrote for Warrior. They just never would play for the next 3 years. It was called "There Are No Rules," which ended up being on the first Hallows Eve album that everybody finally got to hear in 1985. There Are No Rules is on that album. I actually wrote it in January of 1980. So what you're hearing on that album, that was already present with us then. And like I said, bear in mind, we had not heard in 1980 when I'm writing that kind of stuff. I have not heard Slayer. I've not heard of Metallica. Some of these guys, I was a little older than the other ones. So, a lot of the bands that I love so much in thrash and whatever most of them were about 5 years younger than me. So I'm writing this stuff and I'm 20 years old. They're 15. They're in the 9th and 10th grade and don't have licenses yet. And I'm already out, have my own apartment and have a band and we're playing. So going forward through the next 3 years, Warrior was Warrior. We had some of the material that ended by 1983. We had some of the material that ended up being on Hallows Eve. We were playing The Mansion. I think that was written in 1982. And that's on Tales of Terror. There Are No Rules was sitting there, but no one was playing it. I tend to sit on songs a long time, lyrics. I keep a notebook of ideas, phrases, whatever that I pull from all the time. I just go back and go, where was that? So sometimes by the time people hear something, I've probably been sitting on it in one form or another for a long time, 2 to 3 to 5 years. So we got to 1983. And at that point, I didn't really think I wanted to be the lead singer, and I didn't like the other. We had two guys basically doing lead singing in Warrior, and I never really did like his vocals that much. I thought I was passable. For what we were doing, it was kind of working, But what I wanted to do was going to take, I wanted somebody with a rougher voice. What had happened is I had heard Iron Maiden, and Paul Di'Anno was I thought he was the voice for Hallows Eve. I went, that's what it needs to sound like. And so I heard Stacy Anderson over the radio. He was in a local band who at the time was called Public Enemy, before the Public Enemy. And I heard him on the radio in the local station here, 96 Rock, had a local compilation called Home Cooking. His band, Public Enemy, had a song on there called Earth Dogs. One day I heard that on the thing, and I heard him on there going on the radio, and I heard him on there, I'm an Earth Dog and all this stuff. And I, rock and roll is what you need. And then the one thing that really hit was when he went, yeah. And I went, I want that guy. I'm going to fire me and get that guy. And that's exactly what I did that summer. I got that guy. Okay. And I've skipped a whole lot of stuff, but I got him in the band. He and I started playing for the summer in Warrior. He started being the lead singer, and I loved it because the first time he came on stage, he came on and he just ran out there. How you doing, motherfuckers? And whatever. And I was like, this is what we needed. I said, I want a cheerleader. And to me, that's kind of what he was. It was like he understood what people wanted. He was just perfect for it. So anyway, we got him. Time 3 or 4 months passed, and finally in October, I just took him aside on the driveway of our guitarist's house. We had this big, we stood in the driveway and talked for like 2 hours. It's October 29th. This is serious. I said, now this isn't going to be just playing around locally and all this stuff. I said, I want to go for it. I said, I've been studying this stuff. I've been watching this new label called Metal Blade Records. I've been keeping up with what bands in other towns are doing. I've been reading magazines like Kerrang, and there's a lot out there, and I know we can do this, but we have to be good. We have to be real good. And I told him, I said, here's what I want to do. I want you, if you will, just go along with me, and just go along with me in 1 year. And if we're not signed in 1 year doing this, we'll stop and just do something else. We'll go our ways or whatever, make something different or whatever. I'm going to give it 1 year. It's October the 29th, 1983. We got signed by Metal Blade Records on October the 29th, 1984. You couldn't have asked for a better, I mean, it's like the story just came together. All we did that year was rehearse and try a couple of people out. We got who we called Skelly. His name is Steve Shoemaker. We got him first, and he was the guitarist that we got, who preferred to be, I don't know why, he called himself Skeletor. We just started calling him Scully.
How'd you find him?
He was actually sitting at a bar we were playing at called Rumors in Atlanta, and he was at a Warrior show. And I guess it was a couple of months before, we turned around. I met him there, I think, twice. And I turned to Stacy. I said, I'm not sure if he can tune his guitar, but he's got a cool jacket. Let's call him up. He looked the part, the hair and the jacket and everything. So he looks metal. He says he plays guitar. We don't know anyone else because there's nobody in Atlanta that's playing metal. And I said, have him over. So we got him. Then we got Tim, the drummer, the ex-drummer from Public Enemy, and Tim Helton. And then we added David Stewart, who really became more part of the nucleus of later. It was me, Stacy, David, and kind of everybody else was visiting, coming and going.
Yeah, so we'll get into the Metal Blade stuff. Now, I'd love for you to kind of talk about that transition from Warrior to Hallows Eve. How did that really happen?
Yeah, the guys that we were playing with, they were good musicians and all. They wanted to go a different road than us. And eventually what I figured out is they were kind of more a hair metal train of thought, what became hair metal. We weren't calling it hair metal then, but they were thinking more like that we were a Def Leppard type of band. Stacy and I were over here. By this time, we were listening to Killers by Iron Maiden, No Sleep to Hammersmith, all the new wave British metal stuff. And we had run across Show No Mercy with Slayer, and Kill 'Em All was in everybody's cassette deck too, and or whatever you had. And so now we're kind of like going, oh, okay, now we're starting to kind of see the mission. And so we started. So for the next year, we were not fun to rehearse with necessarily. We liked it, but we were dead serious about it. So we talked about how to us we were at war. We were going to this thing. Uh, we were kind of not like the other bands in that we were. I was on my own already. Sometimes I had to walk. Work. My cars never worked. Stacy was the same way. He just lived however he could. And, parents weren't even in the picture. We didn't really have the support of parents. David and Tim both lived with, each of them lived with a mom, but neither one of them had brothers and sisters or a dad. So they had their moms that lived with me, and Stacy both lived on their own, sleeping in the car or with a girl or whatever, the couch surfing or whatever we did. That's just kind of how we lived. And so I was very gung-ho that the only way I'm going to lift myself out of this stuff is to make the band work. It's got to work. So I wasn't messing around. I mean, so when we came to practice at a Hallows Eve practice, you were going to be there. We practiced 3 times a week. Sundays we practiced about 10 hours, complete with stopping for a dinner and all that. And man, if somebody played one wrong note, we just stopped practice, and that person, one other person, we're going to go over that like 8 measures or whatever repeatedly until they could play it 10 times right in a row or whatever. Then we call everybody back in and try it again and whatever. But we were just really on it. If you were 15 minutes late to practice, we had a $5 fine. If you didn't come to practice 3 times ever, you just didn't show, you're out of the band. We all knew that meant you're out of the band, no matter who you were. We were not fucking around.
Yeah.
You're either doing this or you're not. I saw it like we were in the army of our Lawrence of Arabia, and we have to take Damascus.
Right.
So that was a huge thing about the first year together. We didn't play anywhere. We only made ourselves be good.
Well, I find that demo tape to be so tight. And that makes a lot of sense. What can you tell me about the making of that demo?
Okay, the demo tape was interesting that I saw an ad in our version of Creative Loafing. Creative Loafing is sort of like Village Voice in New York. Here in Atlanta, we had Creative Loafing. I think they have it in Florida too. I think they still do. But we had a paper. It was called Creative Loafing. It told when all the bands were playing, artsy stuff around town and so forth. But in it, there was also a section that had people looking for things to do. And I ran across one little bitty ad that said, Nick Jameson of Foghat will record your demo now for $500 in 2 days. And I went, the producer of Foghat that did Fool for the City, they got a gold out or platinum album or gold album or whatever it was at the time. You mean the Foghat, the Slow Ride dude, the guy that played on it? And I went, oh, I don't know what this is going to sound like, but we got to try. We got to try it. This is a real producer. And sure enough, we just called him up and he said, yeah. And we came over to his house and sat in the basement. Now, we were so well rehearsed, so our method of recording was basically that we just sat down and played live in the studio. We were all in the same room. There was no partitions between us except the drummers sat out in the garage. The rest of us had our amps and everything together. We went back. The leads were then flown in. A lead track would be done. You only got like 1 or 2 takes. I mean, if Skelly did a take and it didn't do good, he might get a second one. If it didn't, then David was going to come. We didn't mess around with time. We got to have it knocked out. Stacy got in there and did it once or twice, and it's done. So basically, you're hearing a live band. Demo tape was done by Nick Jameson of Foghat. Pretty cool. So
I had no idea. It's a 2-song demo. Yeah, excellent. So good.
Skelly the Dolls, Metal Merchants, and the song Hallows Eve. Which is 8 minutes and 1 second long.
Okay.
Which is not what you would normally put on a demo tape, an 8-minute song. But
right.
When we were recording, those were the 2 that we felt like were the best too.
Yeah, I'd love to see that reissued at some point. It's so good. I think it's on YouTube.
Well, it is, but what happened is so when Metal Blade, so I stayed on the phone all the time talking to college radio once we had the demo tape, sent it to magazines and all that. So we started getting blurbs and Metal Hammer and Kerrang and things like that. But I think Brian just got wind of us because I just at night, I would work all day at the factory, the chemical factory I worked at, sitting on a forklift. And I would come home and just spend the whole night talking to college DJs, whatever. Back then, since you gotta, there's no phones, there's no flip phones or cell phones or anything. There's no video, none of this fancy stuff. It's just me and a telephone. And in fact, that's the only thing that was in my family room, my apartment at the time was a phone. I used to sit in the floor because there was nowhere to sit with my little papers out with everybody's name on it and be just calling one after the other. Yeah, hey man, can you play over that? Do you play a lot of this? We got to play ours. We sound just like them. So so Brian sent us a Brian Slagle from Metal Blade. This was in their earliest days. So he called up and said, "Do you want a contract?" And I said, "Yeah, send it." And he sent it, and we signed it. And next day, heard it right back. Had a notarized, sent it right back the very next day. Boom. The guys were kind of worried about just signing something like that. And they said, "What if we're getting ripped off?" And I said, "You mean, yeah, but we're in the game. What if we're getting ripped off? We can argue about it later. Let's go make the album, get it out, get in the game. And even if we're signing a messed up contract and we just don't know any better, now we have people have heard of us. Our album is out. We're on the shelves. We're real. And we can go to somebody else, or we can maybe renegotiate, or we can, but let's just get in the game." I love telling about how my dad used to relate everything to sports. He said, you can't strike out if you're sitting on the bench. And that was sort of what I had in my head about, let's just sign the thing and go. It was a short contract. It's like 8 pages maybe. And I could read it. I read it and went, yeah, let's go. So that was sort of what I was doing. So so what happened with the demo tape is we went into the studio, and when we made Tales of Terror, we only had enough budget. The label paid for the stuff.
Do you remember how much money you got from the label?
$2,000.
2,000
for $2,000.
Okay.
The demo tape cost us $500. The album time. Now, what we did is I was looking for big studios with some kind of credentials that hopefully was closing, and maybe we could do some kind of out the back door kind of deal. And right away, just by luck, I found Access Studios. Speaking of, I just saw your interview with Biff Saxon. That was pretty cool. Power and the Glory had just been recorded there. This was right up our alley because we were just, oh, shoot. So we went in there, and I think the engineer that was in there actually, he had us come in and like at night and early Saturday morning and things like that. And, but only for a few hours at a time, a couple hours at a time. And I think the total amount of hours was 12 and a half hours. The demo tape actually took longer than the rest of the album. Yeah, because we had 2 whole days with Nick. So one day was basically recording. The next day we all came in and mixed as a peanut gallery, the whole bunch of us, which I don't.
That's insane.
I hate doing that. But the other album, so it was basically the same thing. We were the room was really large, like a half a gymnasium. And we're in there, and we have a couple of little movable walls that are between us, but we're in the same room. Honestly, that's how a lot of stuff was recorded back then. What we did make sure that we were using, I think on the demo, we were actually using 16 track, but I think we ended up using 24 track for the other 5. I don't think we actually used them all. I think we were basically using about 16 tracks. It didn't really take a lot. A mic here, there's the lead. I mean, 8 on the drums, and that's about it.
Would you say it was like a smooth recording process?
Yeah, because we just walked in and did it. One of the fun things is he told us the reason he would charge us $2,000 is he was charging us $500 a song. Well, we had 5 songs. But our songs had sections, and the guy obviously had not heard a lot of metal as we knew it. He had not heard of any 22 Acacia Avenues where there's parts and whatever. So we came in and told him Horror Show in the Mansion were one song. So what we did when we recorded it, we were trying to get things done. I'm sorry, this is so my integrity just flew right out the window. But yeah, we're trying to get things done. So we went in there and we lost reality long ago, and we all looked at each other and counted to 8. And started the Mansion. So those
That's
two were
so
recorded
smart.
as one song. There's like so many parts to it that he didn't even flinch because it was just like the other songs had parts like all these chopped up parts. Yeah, so we got it done.
Found a loophole. Wow.
$2,000, and we were good at doing stuff like that. So all three of those initial albums that are the ones everybody likes so much are were kind of recorded on sale. So
Okay, so when you recorded that record and you gave it and Brian heard it, what was his reaction?
I don't know. He put it out. He liked it. I was in LA one time and riding in his car, and one time I just asked him, I said, Brian, just out of curiosity, why did you sign us? Why exactly did you sign us? He said, because I liked you. And I said, that's simple. And he goes, that's why I sign everybody. He goes, I always assume that if I like it, a lot of other people will too. He said he signs bands because he likes them. And since then, over these years, if you interview him or watch interviews with him, I've seen him say that several times. And I go, yeah, that's exactly what he told me way back when. He just signed us because he liked us. I mean, he had to hear about us. We had to have a buzz going for him to hear about us all the way in Los Angeles from Atlanta. So he heard of us and he heard the tape and so forth.
How did you feel about the distribution of Tales of Terror?
It was awesome. I didn't really know how it worked back then. There was it was initially distributed by Important Records, and I knew about Important. We had an office here in Atlanta, and I thought about putting the album out by myself, which is weird because I would have gone down to having your own label route then had I done it. It was just a bird chirped and I thought of something else and it went out my head, but I almost did it. So I went to the Important office and asked about if I print this album, would you put it into distribution Important? And the two guys who were there, I remember one of their names too, but they said, yeah, we could do that. But I didn't do it because Metal Blade's contract came and they also had Important Records. I went, well, let's just do it this route because Brian knows more what he's doing than I do, and not terribly a lot more, but more by this time. What he was doing, now I look back at what I've gotten out of listening and reading his book and whatever like that, is that he did a lot of licensing back then. So we were a little confused. So we show up at the Montreal Metal Festival, and I go to the Bonsai record store and find out that we're on Bonsai. What do you mean we're on Bonsai? In Canada, we're on Bonsai. In another country, we're on this label. On another country, we're on this label. Somehow we're being marketed by our records say Combat on them. We're signed to Metal Blade. We never did sign a deal with Combat. But so what Brian was doing was going around, and I think that's how he was seeing some money, is he was licensing the records on Metal Blade to other labels to get them out there as part of distribution, including but he did have a couple of distributors. I think he had a different one in Europe than he had. I remember the Important days, but I'm not sure. So I don't know all the behind the scenes at the record label, but it's interesting to try and figure it out. It's like a big puzzle. I've always said, what did he do? So here I'm running my label, and a lot of my label stuff comes from it's sort of like I went through the Metal Blade school of how do we promote this? How do we market it? What's this distribution business about? So I'm a product of Metal Blade.
Right. Now, we're talking, so like a year between releases, really, with Death and Insanity and Tales of Terror, right? So between that time, what was the relationship of all the band members? Was it just like still putting the head down and just writing, getting stuff out?
Pretty much.
Okay, yeah, if you want to elaborate on some of that.
we were so we could still constantly rehearse when we went on the road a lot. I've since discovered we were actually out there touring as much or more than anybody. Some of our big bands I thought were touring so much, that's why they were big. They weren't actually even, they were touring a lot, but we were touring more. We just didn't know it. And now I've gone off on a tangent.
No, it's okay. Well, you were touring. I'm just talking about if you just want to talk about the years between 85 and 86.
So we're really hustling. The thing is that it's a one album deal with a one album option. Death and Insanity was the option album. And we had a time limit. I think on the deal it said 9 months. They wanted us to not, so we're not only touring at the same time, but the thing is, when we came out with Tales of Terror, we actually already had 4 of the songs that ended up on Death and Insanity. We just didn't put them on there because it ended up being a 29.5-minute album. Debatably, in the US, that's considered a full album. It's like 30 seconds short of what I would consider to be a real album. It's almost, I think Rain and Blood was about the same.
It was a couple of about
albums too. There's some short ones out there.
Do you remember what songs you held onto?
Because we Suicide, Lethal Tendencies, and I can't remember. I remember Death and Insanity was one of the last ones we came up with for Death and Insanity.
Wow.
We just decided to have a title track. I think I'd already been working on a couple of it, but I remember Lethal Tendencies. So in the first show we played, which is a story of itself, we actually opened the show with the song Suicide, which even then kind of shook me up. I went, is this foretelling how this band's going to go? But I just thought the song was the most kick-ass song to open with on that first show, because it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, it just doesn't let up for a minute and a half. Somehow or another, I got 3 verses and 3 choruses and a lead in a minute and a half song. Now you got to understand, I've been listening to a lot of Dead Kennedys and other stuff like that, as well as metal. So there's a little punk going on inside the band there.
Definitely.
But the thing on the first, can I tell the first show story about how it came about? Okay, because I love this, because I'm still hoping someone will come up with one.
So this is the first show.
This is our first show.
Where was this?
It was that's a story too.
Okay.
It was in Atlanta at a hotel bar. They called itself Quincy's. It was actually the hotel bar of a Quality Inn motel that sat out away from everything. I saw it and just went, that's a perfect place for a show. Because there are no bars. Again, I got to emphasize, there are no bars for anyone to play at. There's no metal bars. Atlanta, the big bands that are coming out at the time are Georgia Satellites, Driving and Crying, and bands like that. There are no other bands like us. There are some rock bands, some really good ones with great musicians in them, but they're playing cover. They're doing their stuff's kind of very mainstreamy. And some of them should have been bigger, but I used to think about, like, I wonder which one of these guys is going to end up playing this band one day. When we'd play with them, I go, well, there's a guitarist I can use. But they were all into what they were doing. They weren't into what we were doing. They didn't even know what we were doing. So first show. So we were playing at Quincy's. Okay, it's July the 12th, 1985. It is exactly the same day. We've never played a show at all. It's exactly the same day that our album Tales of Terror actually is in the store. That somebody could go down to Turtles Records and Tapes here in Atlanta, and there were 32 of those. The buyer, they had never even had heavy metal in the store. The buyer actually is one of our friends. He gets a job as the buyer, and the first thing he does is buy all the metal albums and puts them in the stores. You know, Venom, black metal, and whatever. That stuff was not in the stores. But that's the first thing he did. And he bought enough out. I think we ended up with like 5 in every store is what he told me, I think. So anyway, we're there. So our first album comes out the same day as we have our first show. And to this day, I may be wrong. I just don't know any better. I have never heard of another band that did that. It wasn't on purpose. We didn't arrange it that day. We weren't targeting a certain date. We actually didn't know the album came out that day till he brought it down there and showed it to us. We had not even seen the album. Back then, Metal Blade didn't particularly send you comp copies ahead of time. They didn't. They just you turned in your stuff, your art, and what you wanted to say on the album, and and then the next time you saw it, it was in the store. But that was our experience anyway. Everybody's like, "Does the album look good?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just hoping we don't hear from them much. It just then all of a sudden it comes out. So he brought it to the show. That's the first time we saw it. Was at our first show. It did really well. The place packed out. It was mostly just we were all people who had been in other bands that were somewhat popular in Atlanta. So all the people who liked those bands came out to see what we were doing because it seemed to be a big mystery that we had disappeared. And they all came out about, I'd say there might have been 100 people there. I couldn't tell you, but it's a small place. There were about 15 to 20 people that actually knew what we were doing. They came and went berserk. But it went really well. In fact, I recently finally got a recording from VHS onto a DVR, and I'm going to try and put it out. I've got a copy of that first show now.
Whoa.
I know, I'm dying over here. I'm like, it's on my schedule to get to it, but I got other stuff to do. But it's on my schedule to get to it, do something with it. I don't know what. I want to do something with it because it is the first show. First, I got to hear it and see if it's money or any of that business. But I got it, and I'm looking here because I got so many projects going on. It's somewhere. It'll show up when I'm looking for it. There's so much going on.
It's gone.
It's here. It's
Lost
here.
Media. Awesome.
It's here.
Yeah,
it's been
to
lost.
have that on YouTube or something
year.
would be great.
Thankfully, a guy came on and said, "I have a video of your first show," and I said, "Bring me the soundtrack." And he was kindly brought the soundtrack, and I said, "Okay." I said, "You don't want any claim to this or anything?" I said, "I don't know if I'm just going to make a YouTube out of it, or if I'm actually going to print it or anything." I said, "I don't know. I'm just going to get it." But anyway, what I was telling you earlier is that I make sure it was clear that the demo tape that's out there running around is actually on the record, Tales of Terror. It is the same. We just recorded 5 more songs and put them both together.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yes.
So what you're hearing on the record is the demo tape. I got off the rails. I forgot to mention that. It's the same. There's nothing really special about the demo tape necessarily, unless you have an actual cassette copy where we hand wrote the names of the songs on it and stuff. That might make it a little bit cool. But other than that, and it came with a little folded up lyric sheet in it, a sticker.
Classic. Oh, that's awesome.
So,
the first show, it was just people going crazy and probably a successful show by the sounds awesome. Of
it. We did it for 2 days. I ran the door. I had my girlfriend ran the door, and but we took the door. The place just let us have the door. I charged $4 a head. After 2 days, I think I walked out of there with $800 for the band.
Oh, nice! Wow. So that sounds like it was great.
We had no merch. That was just door money.
Yeah. Yeah, so in that, so you wrote most of Death and Insanity on the road. It sounds
kind of. I think David would sit around and he would sit there and practice a lot on acoustic guitar. He was taking classical lessons at the time. He was picking around, and we all wrote separately in our band. Every band has their own little culture within the band, is what I see. Especially now with a label, I deal with different bands, and I noticed they definitely all have their own way of. This is how they think. This is how it's done. This other one's over. This is how we do it. So forth. I got one band with 2 brothers. It seems like they hash it all out, and the bass player sort of just does it. So everybody's different. In our band, we sort of all wrote separately, and then brought it in, and everybody else then hung their decorations on. So when I would write a song, I would just be wherever I was, at home, walking down the road, doing it in my head. I did a lot of it in my head. Stacy would call me up on the phone, and he didn't play guitar very much at that time. He later did, but he had a guitar. But he would call me up, and like Plunging to Megadeth was written like this. He calls me up and he goes, "Man, I got the song in my head. It goes like this." And he goes, the lyrics will do this: "Warriors on horseback, they come from the sky, coming to take you away." And he's singing it to me on the phone. I get up my bass, and I just started playing along with what he's telling me on the phone, and I kind of hash it out. We go to practice that night. Then I show it to David, and then David does it on his guitar, makes sense of what I'm trying to show him. And the next thing you know, we're playing it. But that's how we did a lot of the stuff. We would come in, somebody would come in with a song kind of already done. That was kind of group writing, even though Stacy's credited with writing that one. In my opinion, he did. But but a lot of the songs we came in, I just came in and said, this is a song called Horror Show, and it goes like this. I just walk up to him, like, there exists two worlds for you, and be playing. I say, all right, now I'm going to play the song, and then y'all just start playing along with me however you want to. That's so I felt like we all wrote separately than each other, kind of like Queen.
Interesting.
If you know their story,
they
kind of all came in with their own songs, and we were similar in that way. We didn't do a lot of group writing, but we would come in, and then it would become group when everybody starts hanging their own touch to it.
Okay, so what can you tell me then about the recording process of that second record?
So we found a great studio at the time called JBS. It was actually a movie theater, a small movie theater in Avondale, and here in Atlanta area. It's now called 37 Main. It's a club that has bands and stuff, and it's so funny because I remember when it was actually a movie theater. It's so weird because when we went in there, the seats had been taken out, so where the popcorn and junk were, that became with a window and ended up with a board there, and it was so awesome. So we went there. We recorded it pretty much the same as Tales of Terror, but in a live way. But we had 3 weeks. We did it in 3 weeks. I think we had two. We had a $6,000 budget given to us to begin with, and we went in, and when we got all the tracks down, I could see it seemed like we were going to run out of time, and I wasn't sure about the engineer was really good, but he didn't know anything about metal, which is typical of Atlanta. And he came in, and we had a good time with him. We drove him nuts because we all talked a lot at the same time. We used to laugh about it because we knew what each other were saying. And he would just sit there and look at us, and he was very calm. And he'd say, I don't know how y'all get anything done with all of you talking at the same time. And he'd say it just like, we said he was like droopy. Then we got him one day. He says, we walked in and looked at him. What's up, Donald? His name was Donald Jones. And he goes, what's all the hub? Bub. We died because he was droopy. Anyway, he did a good droopy. We laughed about it. So we did it all like that, kind of live, but we got a little more time. We called up Brian. Well, I called up Brian. I didn't tell anybody I was going to do it. I called up Brian. We were getting close to finishing tracking it, and I said, I think we're going to run out of time here. And I was going to ask him, is there any way we can get a little more money to finish it at this studio? I feel like we're going to find, I don't know what to do. And I said, and I'd love you to hear what we have right now. Is there a way, can I possibly get it on tape and send it to you and then get your feedback and come back? He said, why don't I fly out there and just sit in on the mix? And I went, perfect. Yes. So Brian got on a plane. He came out. I picked him up in the airport, and he came out and went to the studio, and he forked out. He saw where we were at, and after a couple of days, he forked out, I think, $2,000 more. And we still had some backup vocals to do. He's actually singing on Definite Insanity, by the way. Brian Slagle is.
He's doing gang vocals?
Yeah, it's on the gang vote, not on the song Definite Insanity, but on the song Goblet of Gore. There's a part that says, where there's a chanting of, we the people shall destroy, we the people, and it says it over and over. I decided we're going to do backup vocals for everything, and I told everybody, I said, normally don't let anybody come in. I said, tell your girlfriends and wives and whoever's around to just go ahead and come. So we had about 4, 5, 6 people show up, and I said, when he got to that, I said, everybody come out in the studio. And Brian said, I said, you too, man. And they all came out of the studio. We put up a couple of mics on either end of the studio. We all sat there and chanted, we the people. And I liked it because that way we had different mixes of voices. We had a female, we had higher and lowers, and it sounded more like a gang. And then we doubled it one time or whatever. It could have sounded bigger, but it sounded pretty big. Anyway, that's how I got it. So Brian Slagle gets the vocal credit. If you look at the cover in the back, it actually has his name as back on backup vocals. Not sure.
Awesome.
I don't know how many albums he's ever sat in on, but we got him for one. And then, so that was definitely it. There was one song I didn't play bass on. David kept. I didn't like to change it on David's songs because David's songs were fairly like to the point, complicated. He wanted things to be just so. I tend to be a little improv-y. So I'm trying to learn his part exactly why, but he changes stuff a lot. I hate that. So I got the headphones. You'd hear it rolling, and I hear a little bit of hiss, and then David goes, "Can we make it be this other way?" Where he shows me a new part, and I go, "I guess." So and so. We got down. He's okay, rolling. I fumbled with it for a minute. I went, David, it's called Attack of the Iguana. I wanted to call the song the 6,000 Yanks of the Hallowed Trouser Snake because it was $6,000 worth of guitar chain. We spent the most time on David's guitars, let's put it that way. Which I'm glad we did, and David was right, and I love him to death. So I'm not going to say anything bad about it, but I was a little frustrated with him that day because I just set my bass down and he gave it a kick and it danced its way over there. And I said, "You do it. I'm going for pizza." And that's why I'm not playing bass on that song. I did. I left the studio and went down a couple of blocks and got me a slice of pizza and then came back and said, "Y'all done with that crap yet? Y'all done? I'm out of here. I hate that shit." So anyway, my mindset was a little different then. I thought of it then as that we played live all the time, and that was my main thing. Let's go play live, tour, and we got to stop making an album. What an interruption! I felt like it was like, I was interested in it, and I did it. I always sat at the board with the engineer. David did that a lot too, but but I didn't want to be in there any more than I had to be. It was to me, it was just something I have to do to get to the rest of it. But now I'm completely different. I'm the total opposite. I would rather record than play.
Yeah. So there's 2 years between Death and Insanity and Monument, which I think Monument's great. I think it's very underrated. And it's a very natural follow-up to Death and Insanity.
You think so?
I really do. I know
it's a progression. It's different. It's a little different.
It is, but I don't know. I feel like it's a natural next step. It doesn't feel like, what the hell are they doing? It's not like you guys, it doesn't sound like you guys are just like.
That one got written on the road a little bit. We toured and toured and toured and toured in between. And I remember the first time I heard a demo of Speed Freak, David did a demo using a little drum machine. We had never had one before. It was a simple little thing he was carrying around with him. I remember sitting in the RV and various ones of us would be off in corners writing things and scribbling lyrics and whatever. So that one kind of got written on the road off and on. And so we came back and there was a little bit of time. We didn't know if we had a record contract when we started writing those songs because Death and Insanity was it. I actually did. They hadn't said anything at Metal Blade. I didn't know what to do. We were kind of half interested in Megaforce the whole time anyway. But Brian had been really good to us. But the guys asked me to check in with Megaforce. So we actually did send them I think they got the demo of Speed Freak. David did. And the first time I heard it, I was in West Virginia in someone's house. We were playing at the Stadium Inn in Morgantown, West Virginia. That's the first night I heard Speed Freak on the demo. And but I think Megaforce got that. We never heard anything back from Megaforce, but literally the next week, all of a sudden we got this giant contract from Metal Blade. I kind of wonder if there wasn't a call saying, "Hey, your guys are over here trying to." That stuff happens. I know from running a label now that we all talk. So,
Yeah, interesting. So, yeah, between those two records, what was the band's relationship like, just between members generally?
We were still good with each other, but there were some there were some issues. I mean, even from the get go, we were a bunch of. I mean, if Leonard Skinner made a, I couldn't say we were exactly rednecks, but kind of. We we really were some rough and tumble boys. I don't know what the other bands were like, but we weren't what you would call necessarily professional. If we didn't like what somebody was doing, we'd probably fly to their house and kick their ass. We weren't getting an attorney. We're going to just kick your ass.
Street
So
justice.
in our band, it wasn't just talk. We had little fights. We had fights and stuff from the get go. I remember rolling around the grass outside the rehearsal room, wrestling with each other. You know, the last part's got to be like this, choking each other. I remember having bruises and hurting and getting out of the van. And I pulled over to a post office one time in Flagstaff, Arizona, so that this was this was like right during, before or just after Monument came out. At that point, we were actually having to pull over and get out and fight and stuff. So we were arguing, and some of it was not bad arguing. Some of it was like to make things better arguing. Then there was also the just picking at each other. I have stories about that. I thought Stacy was going to die. I think it was David that Stacy was sitting there with some headphones on and listening to this little tape player. The windows were open behind us in the RV. And we're all being real quiet. Everybody's kind of nodding along, whatever. Got their own little headphones on. David turns over very calmly, no look on his face, poker face. Just turns over, takes the headphones gently, and the thing. I think Stacy looked at him like, "What?" But David just turned and threw it out the window, and then turned around very calmly and stared straight. And then Stacy went, "The fuck did you do that for?" I tell you what, he goes, "Hey, what are you going to do about it?" He goes, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to bust you in the chops." And I think there was some wrestling involved with it. When he said bust you in the chops, that became something we all repeated a lot because it was like a cartoon saying to it. It's like, so anybody did anything, it didn't matter. We're in the Stuckey's parking lot. You hear somebody yell at somebody else going, "I'm going to bust you in the chops." So we would make fun of each other mercilessly.
When did that happen, that exchange? Do you remember? Like,
I don't remember exactly. I think we were in the desert somewhere.
Do you remember, like, between, like, was this during the after Death and Insanity? This whole exchange?
Oh, yeah. We started really getting on each other's nerves. And in fact, though, but then we did that next contract with Brian. And honestly, it was when Monument came out. After that's when we really started kind of having a lot of beefs with each other. During the recording of Monument. Yeah. So we did that. They sent us a new contract, which was actually, including the options, was an 8-album deal. Where was Monument? Oh, yeah. So they get us the 8-album deal. It's 4 albums with options. So 4 options. So it's kind of an 8-album deal. It's saying we have to put out an album every 9 months.
An 8-album deal is insane.
Well, we were, this is at the same time as, so Fates Warning was about to release No Exit. We were about to release Monument. We toured together when Monument released, when No Exit released. We toured together, and on all the shows, we toured together for about 2 months, and we A-B'd who headlined each night because we were both kind of neck and neck in sales at the label and whatever. They actually charted on Billboard. They were like at 180, and somebody I knew that worked at Billboard said, if they had a 201, it's you guys. You're just this close. No, well, that's our entire career. It's like, I don't know. We're always almost like an Apocalyptica, almost. It just seemed like everything with us was that. So we've been out touring, and a lot of the dates were really cool. Our second date ever was out of the country in Montreal. And we're about, I'm going to guess, 2,000 to 3,000 people. There's the Montreal Metal Fest. The lineup was Agent Steel, Hallows Eve, Exodus, Metal Church, and Slayer. The very next show we played was in New York at the famous L'Amour. It's us, Nasty Savage, and Slayer. We did several shows with Slayer, Nasty Savage, either one, both, whatever, over the next few months. So we kind of went when we came out. That album just went. That's Tales of Terror. The first, according to our statements in the first year. That one sold 29,000. Okay, the next year, that one plus Death and Insanity. At any rate, each album was doubling what the last one did. We were seeing that our audiences were getting bigger and bigger rapidly. Now we're on tour with, these are the bands we listen to, and we're on tour with them, or playing in bills with them. It's just like everybody you ever heard of. We've got Death opening for us. We're playing with King Diamond, Megadeth, just everybody. Just start listing bands, and we were there. Always just slightly almost. So anyway,
but you were there.
We were there,
regardless of how close you were.
The very first Milwaukee Metal Festival, we were there. We were like 5 bands or 4 bands from the headliner, so we had a nice sweet spot too. So we were there.
How did that affect the band? Because doing those massive gigs and everything, like I hear stories of like, you know, then you start like drinking, the money's coming in, you know, there's maybe a bit of ego. Like, how was it like maintaining all of that going into these big shows, these giant audiences? I can't even imagine.
It did come, because every day was crazy. It was like we didn't know what we were getting into every day. I mean, so sometimes we had money, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes we had money and we weren't going to spend it. We would ride around in an RV while the other bands were in a bus. But we had our own sound man and an amp pusher, and some of the bands riding on the bus were moving their own equipment, or they had a guy too, but they were paying for the bus. We paid for the RV. So they would stay, they're paying for all that. We would stay in a campground. We'd have money on us. We're just not spending. We would rather have the money.
That's smart.
So but we did splurge on. We always had a sound person with us, and I don't know if a lot of bands do that, but I can't think of a single show where we didn't have a sound for our own guy. And these days, it's like club bands. They just don't. You just come in. There's a guy. You line check, and you go. Our contract had like a minimum 2-hour sound check in the afternoon. If we were opening somebody, we were kind of lucky to get 20 or 30 minutes, but we still got it. But it would be in the afternoon. So load in with like our contracts. I was looking at one the other day. Load in was at 1:30 p.m. Sound check was from 3 to 4. Then somebody else sound check. But we didn't play till 10 o'clock at night. We would leave there, go to an in-store that Metal Blade probably set up, and then just stand around, hang out in the RV waiting to play, basically. We might come in and go backstage, but what were we talking about at Monument, though? I can't remember.
Yeah, we were kind of just talking about, I guess, kind of the shows leading up to that release.
Oh yeah, those were fun. Those were the fun days, and we were all still kind of on board. There was a little bit of pushing and shoving and yelling, and I don't know. We'd laugh about it sometimes. I remember Stacy and I'd be driving, and Stacy's in the passenger side, and I remember taking turns hitting each other in the arm to just see if we could get bruises on each other. We were rough players, man. You didn't want to go to. You might go to sleep in the hotel. If we got a hotel room, we were usually all packed in one room. There'd be like 6 to 8 of us. We're all in one room. Sometimes we take the mattress off and throw it on the floor, and somebody'd sleep on the box springs, and we were a mess. But you might wake up with like something written on your face. Then we go to breakfast in the morning, and here you come walking up to pay for your bill, and you've got a magic marker swastika on your forehead. And we're not into that. It's just we're trying to be problem Steve. Right. You know, you might wake up, your shoestrings are tied together, or some foolish, shaving creams on your nose or something. We were always messing with you. You didn't want to go to sleep around us. We just loved that.
Now, what can you tell me about going in to record Monument?
That was a much more professional situation. We had gotten a little bit slick at that point. We brought Donald Jones in again. That's why I made a point of talking about him, is because Donald came in. He sort of became our guy in the studio. If we'd done a 4th album in that lineup, we would have called Donald. So, matter of fact, I've got his autograph. So when we went to a show and tell, we went in the studio for Monument, and this is the Monument bass. I have it right here. It's a Jackson. No, it's a Charvel. Yeah, it's a Jackson Charvel. And there's everyone's signature on it.
Awesome.
I don't know which there. I don't know if you can see it, but I got the engineer to sign it too. And then I retired the bass. I played some shows with that year, but we all met at a restaurant one day later and signed a bunch of stuff for each other. So I got my bass signed with
That's
everybody on it.
awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. It's the only bass I managed to keep. The rest of them, one way or the other, got destroyed somehow or another on stage, out the room, or whatever. So yeah, I'd go through basses like crazy.
It happens.
So anyway, we went to, I don't know now, I got my special ones and stuff. I don't throw them no more. So anyway, so Monument, yeah. So we went in the studio, and it was Studio One here in Atlanta. I don't know if you know about Studio One, but it's pretty famous.
Yes.
Some of the stuff that was recorded there was the Elf album with Ronnie James Dio, Leonard Skinner stuff. I know the whole Nothing Fancy was done there. I believe some of the first album stuff was done there, if not all of it. Studio One, and also, and some stuff like Journey Escape was done there. And the reason I know, this is another studio where I found one that was going out of business. They had a deal with Georgia State, had a new thing called commercial music business. You could get a degree in music business. It was new. So some students from there were in the studio, and they were actually cataloging all the tapes in the tape warehouse. And when we'd walk out in the lobby, master tapes for all these amazing albums. Ted Nugent, Cat Scratch Fever was one of them. I remember walking by one little tape, and it was What's Your Name by Leonard Skinner sitting on a pinball machine, along with, some paperwork and whatever. And I was like, oh my God, don't touch any of this stuff. We'll get killed if we do anything to it. So, but anyway, it was a very well-known studio. And we went in there. We were the last band to record there, as far as they told me. As far as I know, I still haven't seen anything about anybody recording after us, because they were loading shit. They were loading this stuff out, but we were in there for 9 weeks. I know in the morning, sometimes Johnny Van Zant was in there doing some stuff, and then we would come in sort of 10, 11, 12, 1, and 2. It's just whenever we could get. We just came in a little different than each other. But I know he was coming in early in the mornings for some reason and doing some demos. But anyway, he left us a couple of nasty notes when he saw our stuff laying out that said all this stuff about death. And he goes, "You guys don't know anything about death. I'm a Leonard Skinner. I'll tell you about death." And all that. I was like, it's not like nothing ever happened to us, dude. So we left him.
He's been through the trenches at that point.
He's got a point. I mean, I know their story, but it's an important and sad story, the plane and all that. I've got feelings, but
that's true.
We had our stories, things that happened to us, and friends that we don't necessarily want to. I know Plea of the Aged. We wrote a lot of personal stuff in our song Plea of the Aged on Death and Insanity. It was about Stacy's dad, and it was like what Stacy thought might be his dad's final words, and it was what Stacy was supposing when he visited him, and he thought this might be the last time I see my dad. So he wrote down his feelings about that meeting or whatever. So we knew what death was. We knew. So anyway, we left. So one of us, I don't know who, took down a picture in the lobby of, this is one of our bad stories, took down a big photo of Johnny Van Zant and left it in the lobby floor that night and took a dump on it and left it there. And guess who found it the next morning? We came in and found out a bunch of stuff had been thrown around. There was a nasty note for us that I wish I'd kept. God, I would have that thing framed now, telling us how we suck and we better watch ourselves and all this stuff. We just laughed and laughed and we laughed and laughed. People telling us to watch ourselves. We weren't exactly a small bunch of. I'm the short one at 5'7". The rest of them are over 6 foot, and we're all big boys. And I was like, we're not really that afraid of anybody, really, as a group.
Isn't that thrash metal, though? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Isn't that the lifestyle, though?
We don't think we're meaning any harm by it. And I had to kind of grow out of all that, because the stuff we would do to each other, we just thought that's just how we do. And then other people would get angry at us. We would laugh and laugh about it. We would do stuff to make people mad at us. And then we would have a big laugh about it. And then a week later, we go, remember that time in that store where you knocked all the batteries off in the rack at the front of the store? And then then we were all in the back making sandwiches while they were dealing with that. we were not nice boys. So it
That's a
was
great story.
something else.
Yeah, that's a great story.
So
Okay,
Monument,
so what was
but
your
anyway,
budget
Monument came out
for that?
much more polished. It took us
Right.
9 weeks to make the album. I
Okay.
think Metal Bleed that happened. So Bill Metoyer, who has done so many albums. I don't know if you're aware of him. You should be.
Yes.
He's done like God, I don't know, 200 or 300 albums in his life. He's done he remastered some stuff. He did Alice Cooper's Muscle of Love. He is the guy who recorded the first couple of Slayer albums. He did Show No Mercy right in his living room, he told me, on an 8-track. And but anyway, so I think at this point he's helping Metal Blade a lot. He's in charge of, I think he's more or less in charge of production. I know he helped us get some gigs too, which I was always extremely grateful for. But he's a nice guy, great guy. Anyway, so he calls me up and says, "Can we hear what you got?" Because it's been 3 weeks. We're supposedly at the end of our budget. I went, "Yeah, Bill, I'll show you what we got." I'd gotten kind of fed up with the constant drum testing going on. They're going to go out and get more heads to the drums. They're going to go out and do this. Now we're moving a mic 1/4 inch, and I'm sitting there like this, going, "Oh my God, I always stay in the studio, but y'all are going crazy." I said, "Y'all drive me nuts." I said, "When are we going to actually record the fucker?" So I actually left and said, "Y'all let me know when the drums are done, and then I'll come back and I'll come back and jump in on the rest of it and all that. And I'll just have to assume that I'm going to have to accept the drums, whatever y'all did." And I'm okay with that. Y'all are all very professional, and I know you guys all want quality too. So I'll come back. So me and David Stacy all never came back. Bill wants to know Bill wants to know what's up. I send him what there is, and he calls me back all alarmed. "Honey, this is just all drum tracks. You're supposed to be done." I said, "I know." I know, but I can't get him to do anything. And so there was some kind of phone call between whoever at Metal Blade and whoever at Studio One, or maybe Donald. And we just stayed out of it. They had some kind of powwow. We came back, and all of a sudden it was like, I get told that Donald's going to stay and finish the album. I heard rumor that he took a pay cut to do it, that they decided not to pay him if he wanted to finish the album, that he was going to have to relinquish his pay. I'm not sure if that's what happened. That's what one of the other guys told me, and I went, "Oh my God, he is such a great guy if he does that." And it's so sad. I feel so bad about it. But anyway, so I come in, everybody's very serious. They go, "No, we're going to record the album now. We have the drum track." So I go, "Okay, let's actually record the album now." And so I think it ended up being a long 9-week process at $500 a day. This ended up being a $30,000 album. I don't know what they were settled on behind the scenes, but what I knew was we were paying $500 a day, and I know we were in there for 9 weeks daily. And so from the math, they may have cut a different deal behind the scenes, but that turns into 30,000 if that's all you know.
From a $2,000 recording to now a 30,000 on the third.
Holy crap! Which was entirely unnecessary in my opinion. I can run a band through my studio a lot faster than that and come out with something really great that's just on the same par level with what those albums are, and I don't need to do all that. I can run somebody through here. The albums, when somebody comes and records with me, I can do all the tracking, get it mixed, and ready to go to master. And they're generally going to be between, depends on how fast the band is recording, but about $1,500 to $2,000. Most of them about $1,500, $1,600 is what they end up spending with me for tracking. And then I let other people if I mixed it, somebody else can master because I like the other ear on it. That's just me. A lot of guys want to master. They go, "And I can master it too." And I go, "Well, that's like checking your own homework in school. It's like, it's not really, I mean, you've heard it so much. What do you mean you're going to do it yourself?" I'm like, I find it, I'd rather have somebody else master. And same thing, if you want to send me mixes, and you want me to master it, I can do that too. I've done that too. Mastered it for a band, but I'm not going to do the mixes if I'm mastering it. I want to just do the master. I just think you need a third ear on there.
Yeah, now I love those first 3 albums. They're so great, those 80s records. And I remember when I got into the band for the first time, I did hold off on that third album just because of the cover. because
It was a little odd. Yeah.
it was a little odd, but then I eventually listened to it. I'm like, well, this is awesome. It's like it's not just a
Thank you.
clone of the last one or what. I feel like like I was saying before, it was a natural progression instead of like this like out of pocket change of sound. And I know that maybe just because of the cover, maybe not enough people revisit or have listened to this
Maybe
record.
not. It was
But
different than it didn't look like a thrash cover.
so where does that cover even come from?
Okay, so again, Metal Blade put us in touch with them. I forgot who at Metal Blade, who this ended up being was Ionis, who ended up being a very famous artist, working with the Allman Brothers, Uriah Heep, uh, multiple famous covers. He ended up doing. He not too long ago passed away. We had couple of good conversations before he did. He remembered meeting me at a motel room. It showed me transparencies, and he said, "What I'm doing is taking a photo." And actually, that was Joe from Fate's Warning. That was his lady on the cover, the model. I still haven't ever met her, but I saw her when we were playing in Bayshore one time. I saw her in the parking lot with Joe and Fate's Warning show and whatever. Everybody said, "Come here, that's who's on our album cover." And I went and looked. You couldn't tell on the album cover if it was even a man or a woman. It was just a figure. My idea was monument to nothing. My idea was a little hazy. My idea I gave him was I was thinking of like a 2001, there's a monolith. You look through it, and on the back cover, it goes into an entirely different world. It was just all spacey. And this is some of my crazy ideas that I have that I got that they would gatekeep me on sometimes. I wanted to do a whole song once.
The rest of the band would gatekeep you.
Yeah, and we wanted, and that was good. That was good, and especially we were very careful. I think by the time we got the monument, what was on there, because I was coming up with all. I came in one time wanting to perform a song using trash can lids. I brought them and actually got the student performed it with mallets and everything, and sang a bunch of stuff about food, about turkeys and lobsters and whatever. And they all sat in there very quietly, and then I heard, "Honey, can you come to the control room, please?" I went in there. "What's up there?" "We're not doing that." That's just nonsense.
You should have joined Metallica in 2004.
Yeah.
Well, that's that. It reminds me of that snare sound on Saint Anger.
Oh, like I know. Everybody hates that sound. It's funny because personally, I think when you get to Evil Never Dies, I think that's what the snare sounds like on that album. I think it sounds like Saint Anger. We had a piccolo snare. The drummer that I was using on that album had a piccolo snare, and to me, it sounded like the snare sounds like Saint Anger. I don't know. I put it out, and it was one of those that I knew people were either going to hate it or love it, and it was just, yeah.
Well, we'll get into that for sure. We will 100% get into that. Now, yeah. Okay, so Monument comes out, and what's the band's reaction to the final product, and like what's going on?
Pretty cool. It came out about what we thought it would be. It's more polished. It's more point. We decided to put a cover on there. We'd never had one of those. My initial idea was to put Stone Cold. Nobody had ever done a Queen song in a thrash band. Nobody did a lot of covers in thrash. We decided to do a cover. I said Stone Cold Crazy by Queen. Metallica hadn't done it yet. We didn't know Metallica would do it. I got X'd on that because they told me another gatekeeping thing. They told me that they didn't want to do it because every bar band does it. I thought that was exactly why to do it. And I thought it was. I said, it is a thrash song. We just didn't know. They didn't know it was thrash when they wrote it. God dang. It's got the whole Ace of Spades beat in there and everything.
Definitely.
So anyway, we didn't do it. We came up with a Sheer Heart Attack, and we put that on there. Probably in hindsight, I wish we hadn't put it as the second song. I wish it had been more of a bonus or buried halfway through the middle of the second side or something. I think it was worth being on the album. And people loved it when we played it live. We'd always end with Speed Freak. And if we got to come back out, we were doing Sheer Heart Attack. Because by that time, everything was out of tune and it didn't matter anymore. So we did Sheer Heart Attack. when we went on tour a lot. We went out to Metal Blade in April of '88. Me and Stacy did. We flew out there, went to all clubs, did a thing called press days where we sat on the phone for 3 days doing an interview like literally every 10 minutes. Had somebody next to us getting the next one up and then handing us the phone. And this is Tommy, blah, blah, blah. And then they'd ask the same 10 questions. We'd say the same 10 things. We actually had a little bit of a script in front of us saying this is what we're going to say. And they'd get to the end, and we knew what to be non-committal about, and we had turned into sort of, I'm going to say, we were becoming professional, minding our manners a little bit, and we were starting to act like a band instead of a bunch of guys out, that you couldn't hardly tell us from the Sex Pistols back in the old days. But now
it's like businessman, like. Almost.
We become business. So we out there and we did some ungodly man. We sat around for the whole time. They're shoving posters in front of us that were signing these promotional posters for the record stores and that people might get or whatever. Whoever. There's like 1,000 of them. Me and Stacey are sitting there signing them as we're talking on the phone. And so we're at work. We're out there to work. They did take us out to some clubs and stuff. That was kind of fun. I bumped into Tom Ray and Jeff Hanneman at the Cat Club, and we went to we just all over the place. I saw Bitch. That was pretty cool. It was kind of cool because we're in Atlanta. We really have we're like, who can we see out here that we never get to see? And we were kind of interested in that, so they let us go out at night with somebody from the office and a Metal Blade credit card, and said, don't spend too much. And we could buy like 2 drinks or something. It was awesome. What a nice week. Right after that, we went on the road from April to October. Thus comes the destruction of the lineup. We spent 2 months with Fate's Warning. Then we spent a couple of months with various bands. I don't know, one of them was MX Machine. I remember them. All through the summer. At one point, we were really starting to argue a lot at each other's throats, getting where we weren't really even talking to each other very much, even sitting next to each other in the RV. We're all busy playing little handheld games or reading or just sitting in 3 different parts. I think there was a rule at one point where one of us had to sit in the front, one had to sit in the middle, one had to stay in the back. Because we had a road manager at that time, and I think that's something he came up with, and he sort of stood between us. But, all right, you're going to ride up there. Okay, you want to drive? Yeah. Okay. Tommy likes to drive. So even though we've hired a driver, Tommy's going to drive. Driver, you're going to sit in the passenger seat for a while. David's going to take the back, and Stacy's going to sit in the middle. David goes, sits in the back, and starts working on more songs. Monument became more of a David and Tommy album. Stacy's song, Speed Freak, was one of the more popular ones on it. Stacy's songs were always a little more popular than mine and David's, but he only wrote less than we did, but they were the 6 main songs that everybody wanted to hear were Stacy written. And then the other 75% were me or David writing stuff. And we filled it all out, and people liked our songs too, but they weren't the sing-along ones. With the D-I-E, death in effect. I would have never written something like that. But Stacy knew what people liked.
So, anthem your wife, tracks. Yeah.
He was more anthem-y and kind of had an ear for that kind of thing. So anyway, we got to the end of August. We started touring with, it was Blind Illusion, At War, and Hallows Eve for probably 2.5 months straight. Blind Illusion shortly thereafter, I think they dropped a guy, and more or less Larry Lalonde and Les Claypool turned around and became Primus. There's still a Blind Illusion, but they basically just changed. Did they change one guy or 2 guys out and then declare?
I think 2 guys. I know Blind Illusion's active now.
It was, yeah, exactly. And so it was kind of like we had Blind. It was kind of like we had Primus opening for us, and every night I got to see. I didn't know this guy. I'd never heard of any of them, but their manager had called me and asked about getting on a tour with us. And said, well, they practice in my basement. Who does? They said, Blind Illusion and Possess practice in my basement at my house. I said, and she said, do you think this Blind Illusion's got an album would you think they could tour with you? And I said, yeah, we got a couple months coming up where we're actually kind of looking for somebody that people, like a lot of people know, but they don't yet. They're just in that first album kind of area. And so we got them and got our friends in that war. And so off we go. At some point, Stacy we became very unhappy with each other. And here comes the big, if I had a destruction card on the tarot, I would hold it up now. To me, this was truly, no matter what I did after that, this was truly the end of the band. We're out there. We've used 11 different drummers in 5 years. None of them blew up or anything like that. They just kept coming and going so fast we couldn't hardly. We would be on tour and be calling up another one, sending them set lists and having them picking them up at the airport. And still got the other one in the car, and we're not dropping him off till we get to this town, our vehicle. So we at one point we actually had 3, and that went for about 2 days till we dropped one off at the airport in Chicago, and the other one became the tech for the other one, and it was like so. But so it got to where it felt like we never really even had a drummer, although we considered Tim, who's half of the first album and all of the second album, we considered him to be our real drummer. But he, at the end of Death and Insanity, after a few shows, just decided he didn't want to do it anymore. He didn't go play with, as far as I could tell, I don't think he went and played with anybody again. A lot of people who played with me don't play anymore after me. I don't know what I'm doing to everybody. But some went on to better things. But it seems like 80% of people who play with me like give up music after me, like I'm killing them or something. I'm killing their dreams or something. I don't know what I think they see what it really is, and they have a sort of an unrealistic expectation.
Harsh reality of
I'd call it a case of unrealistic expectations because you've been seeing the media too much, the written bios, behind the scenes, VH1 collection, stuff like that. And I go, that's not how it really, it's, you know what it is? It's riding in a car all day or a vehicle all day, about 8 or 10, 12 hours. You get somewhere, you stand around, you play, pay the equipment back out, go to a hotel or a campground, whatever your deal is, someone's house, sleep, up in 6 hours, ride around all day. It's a job. It's a job I want, that I love, but it's a job. I just don't want to work in a warehouse at a chemical factory. This to me is not much different. It's just that it's music instead of sheetrocking or having a paint company with 4 other guys who get in the van, get gigs at various houses around their end of the state, drive around, do the job, then go to the next. I see it as the same thing. And if you think of it as it's a business, it is a business. It's music business. I'm doing the art, I am creating, but I also see it as a business. If you see it as that, it'll unfold that way. Everybody's like, we just don't make any money. I go, are you thinking we need to make money and how to go about it? Or because you'll make all the subtle little subconscious choices. I said, one main thing is if they say if there's no money, say no. If there is money, say yes. That's pretty fundamental. And I go, some guy with a van and a bunch of paint buckets and 3 other dudes says, we can't pay you, but we're going to go do this. We just don't get paid. We just like doing it. Would you say, oh yeah, I just like painting houses? No, you'd say no. I see it the same. It's a job. Do the job. Don't have any unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
That's one of my main things.
And I'm right there with you. I that's a mindset you have to have in a situation like this. And in the music industry, the music business is a business. And a lot of people, need to understand that from what I've heard, even nowadays with current bands. So what can you tell me about the band's relationship and then what happened in 93?
Oh yeah. So we, I think we needed to take a break, and we were just in a position where we just started this first album of the 8-album deal. We've just got the momentum going. It seemed like in the last 3 years of touring and putting out these 3 albums, it seems like to me, it felt like we were just starting to really, really be in there, really doing it. Now we're not opening for people at Lemoore in New York. We're headlining Lemoore. 1,500 people show up. I'm looking on the side of the stage. Brian actually flew out, and he's standing over there for whatever reasons. Might be more than just to see us, but I'm looking out at the audience, and there's you know, there's people that I listen to standing in the audience. Uh, some of that was really cool. A little nerve wracking sometimes. So anyway, I got some stories about that. But anyway, so here he is at the end of it, and we had just it had become really a lot of work and a lot to do. And sometimes I thought we were just going to die going up exit ramps in ice storms and coming back down with a RV with a big trailer on the back. And then we're coming back down it sideways at 2 a.m. There are no cell phones to call for help. And I'm like, just don't go in the grass. Just don't go in the grass all the way down. So we were having all this stuff. I remember a car wreck where I went to sleep at the wheel and it just literally rolled up on top of another car in front of us. And it was two little old ladies. Because we were just awake all the time. And we were really working hard. And I think it finally got to us. In retrospect, I think we really should have stopped. We should have done the thing with Fates Warning, stopped for 2 or 3 months over the summer, then come back and done the other tour. If we could have done that, that would have been perfect. But I think that break would have done us a lot of good. We were just at each other's throats.
Just ultimate burnout, pretty much.
All kinds of personal shakedowns between us and just too much. I think there's too much picking on each other. We were immature. We hadn't quite grown up. We were actually very young. I mean, like a lot of the other bands like us, we were a tad older than the other ones. I was older than the other guys in the band. But, I mean, we're still in our mid-20s, and this is all going down. 1988, I'm 29. But the rest of the guys are like 22, 23, 24. So we're really kids, almost. So one day, I knew something was up with him. This was the big moment. I knew we were in New York. We were at Brooklyn, parked at a parking meter where I put in every couple hours just putting in some quarters, and we're actually sleeping right there. The next night we have to be in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I know I got to run to it's pretty good ways. I know we had 4 dates roughly in Wisconsin. The next 4 days I think it was 3 or 4 dates. I had to run to the booking agency. Was General Talent International, which was in New York. I had to run there in person and pick up some money and sign a contract for some more shows, and which were some pretty big shows. So I went over there, picked up some money, some basically what boiled down to tour support we were needing, and but anyway, before I did that, I got up and I remember there was a little place to eat breakfast, and everybody got out. We had to eat breakfast about 9 a.m. And I remember looking at Stacy, and he's laying there, and I was like, Eve, Tenny, I know Stacy real well. We're good friends back home, best of friends. But I'm looking and going, he's not asleep. I didn't know he was going to leave. I said, I don't know if he was like going to play a joke on us, or I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. I said, let me do something. So I walked out. I wasn't particularly, I went in, I got out, I went in, I sat there and counted to 3 and turned around and walked back out. Looked in there, he's gone. Suitcase gone, everything. He was just waiting for me to walk out of the bus. And he's gone. So the stories of what if I was making a movie, I'd have to do it as like 3 different short films about what happened to Stacy. Because since then, I've gotten about 3 stories that are all not connected of what he did. I have no idea what he did. And to this day, I don't know why he quit the band. Because he's not really ever told me. He just left. We could not. I immediately got on the phone to Metal Blade, which was, well, not immediately. I had to wait a couple hours because they're on West Coast time. And it's early in the morning. So I usually had to wait about like 11, 12 o'clock to even talk to them. I did have to go to pick up the money, and didn't get to sign the contract because I got to tell them, hey, our singer just quit, to our booking agency, who's got us booked all the way through to February with deposits on all the shows. At that point, we were getting deposits on shows. We had trimmed. Apparently, it was all returned. I don't know. He handled it. And so anyway, I called, and I know that a lot of names were tossed around, some that wouldn't work, some that might. I know David Wayne was talked to, the Metal Church. That was a possibility at that moment. There was a sort of a window open at that October '88. I don't know what he was doing, but for whatever reason, it was possible, but it didn't happen. I guess he declined or whatever, but it just didn't follow through. I know we talked to Neil Turbin from the first Anthrax album. I talked to him several times. I think I kind of walked off on that one. I could tell he wasn't really us. I mean, as a New York, I really wanted somebody from our area because we were all from Atlanta. We didn't come from other places. And whenever we were like each other, when we said go to Cumberland Mall, we all knew where that was. We talked about what happened 10 years ago near the Capitol. We all knew about it. We were brothers from the same place. We were like each other. So I really wanted to get back to that. But back in Atlanta, I mean, the metal scene was just starting. There weren't but like 2 or 3 or 4 bands even in existence at that point. So everybody that might could have done it was in a band. The couple of people said they could do it, they couldn't do it. They just said, "Yeah, I can do it," and then they'd come to practice and I was like, "No." We'd let them sing a song or two and say bye. We auditioned a bunch of people, but shortly thereafter, we had been looking for an extra guitarist the whole time. To have 2 guitarists back to like the first album. We just kept going with just David. It wasn't conscious. We were looking. We just never found anybody. Finally, we found somebody, pops into it. It was James Murphy, recently of Agent Steel. And he hung around for a little bit, rehearsed with us a little bit. And after about, I think, 4 months, at that point, he got a call from Chuck Schuldiner from Death and got an offer to be in Death.
Oh, yeah.
And even David, I found out years later that David told him you should go ahead and take that. And I saw James in an interview said he was with us for a minute, but it looked like we weren't ever going to get a replacement for Stacy. And I said, the problem is we had a really good lead singer, but he had a roughness to his voice. And it was really a problem trying to replace. He was almost unreplaceable.
Yeah, because it's like, do you just try to replace him completely or go in a new direction? I can't.
Everybody that came in that could sing, it would have been a new direction. And he was key to writing the songs too. It wasn't like it was just vocals. It wasn't just the job for him. It was like he was part of the creative team, the process. So it just wasn't, to me, it was just never going to be right. And so I tried again later with Evil Never Dies. Fast forward years later.
Yeah. So, okay, we'll get into that. So what was that day where you just put your foot down and you're like, the band's done? And this is in 93, I believe.
Yeah, I tried it with a couple other lineups, and it just never really. People would send me messages. I even got letters from people who live locally who just didn't want to tell me to my face. That one in particular, it said, "Man, I saw y'all. That was atrocious. Atrocious. Who says atrocious?" But anyway, he said that was atrocious, and I said, I kind of agree. I would see back little films of it. Everything. Yeah, that really did suck. That wasn't Hallows Eve. That was me up there with 3 guys trying to be Hallows Eve. So I never really took it out on the road with those other lineups or showed it. I was trying to test it at home a couple of times. This one had 6 shows, this one had 3 shows, and it just finally I just said, "Well, what happened? I'll tell you." It was actually kind of personal. My daughter got to where she was she got 6 years old, 5 years old. She started being in kindergarten, first grade, and everything. And I said, "You know what? I'm going to stop, and this is a good stopping place. I'm going to still play with people, just to be playing, but to hone skills or that." I said, "I'm going to stop and raise my daughter till she's old enough, 17, 18. And I said, then we'll see what's up." And at the same time, that's right when grunge came into it and all the metal bands got weird or became something else. And I was confused about what are we trying to do out here in music anyway, and whatever. And I just said, so my friend Skelly calls me up and says, "Hey, you want to get," and he talks like that. "Hey, you want to come play with me, Lestregas Nostratus?" And I went, "You're black metal, right?" He goes, "Yes. None of this melody crap. None of this melody shit." So I said, yeah, sure. It's difficult to play your music. You're so difficult. I knew what it was. He had left the band over us not playing a specific song, which he was playing. And
Well, I rather.
I would join them.
Uh-huh.
But it was basically just a lot of rehearsing and no
Yeah.
actual playing anywhere or anything. And so off and on, I kind of did that. Did some other things with a couple of rock bands and some punky stuff, and just so I was still playing, but I didn't want to be career minded for a while because I wanted to spend time with my daughter specifically, raising her. And so, when we got done with that, then
And
I came back to
you had a demo from 1990, right? And then which became Evil Never Dies, I believe some of those
hard.
songs.
I think some of the songs were, yeah. And and about, I think there were four of the songs that were actually songs we had started during the Monument, right after Monument. These were
Monkey's
songs we were
Paw,
working on.
I believe,
Yeah,
was one of
Monkey's
them.
Paw involved some riffs and some lyrics. I wrote at a bar in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay, so what happens in 2004, which made you want to jump back into Hallows Eve?
The real catalyst was I started stockpiling a little bit of there was still some Hallows Eve sort of ideas, and I think Steve was still around doing stuff. I mean Skelly, and then we call him Steve, a lot of us, but but Oliver from Keep It True had been in touch with a guy named Steve Cannon, who was interested in becoming a singer himself. He halfway could, and so Steve calls me up. That's Steve. Cannon calls me up, and so without going through a lot of like, this guy nobody knows who he is, and this guy nobody knows who. Anyway, so Steve came and said, "You want to go play Keep It True, Hallows Eve?" And I said, "No." I turned it down over and over. I said, no, I'm not going to go headline in freaking Germany to a lot of very real metal friends with a slack ass Hallows Eve. And I said, no, I'm not. And he said, well, I'll do the singing. I said, well, okay, let's all meet over at Skelly's house. We all met at Skelly's house, and we took I can't remember who was on drums at that moment. It might have been Dane, but anyway, so me and Skelly, and we started kind of farting around with it. I didn't think he could. He said, "Oh, he had kind of a thing about it." I put him on a 4-track cassette tape player, and I said, "Sing. Let me show you something." I said, "Now I'm gonna play that back, but you're gonna sing along with yourself again." He did it, and he heard his voice doubled. He goes, "Oh, I can sing." I go, "Kinda, yeah." I said, "Now you know what everybody else does. Don't think you can't sing like Ozzy because your voice doesn't sound like Ozzy. Ozzy doesn't sound like Ozzy without being doubled and sometimes quadrupled." I said, so there's ways to make that'll give you a little more confidence. And so he worked on it. I finally decided I was singing a lot of it too. I'd been the lead singer in Warrior. I'd been the lead singer in everything I'd ever been in except Hallows Eve, where I replaced myself. So I finally just said, I tested it. I went and got a little vocal coaching and brought the Hallows Eve songs that we were using in the set. And I said, coach me on these songs. So I had about 4 months of vocal lessons on those songs. I turned around and said, okay, Steve, we're not going to take you. He was very upset about it. But he went off and made his own band, and it went forward from there and became a musician. Now he's got a thing called Broken Trinity. And that around here, everybody knows what it is. So anyway, it's still kind of blackened and whatever. But anyway, so with Steven there, it started being kind of black, and we ended up over there playing Keep It True, co-headlining with Hellstar. It was awesome. Great show, 2,300 people.
It's a great lineup.
We thought it was a great show. The people of Europe basically didn't like our presentation. We had a couple of bad reviews of the show. And I said, okay. See, we had been doing it by that time. We had Evil Never Dies Out. We had been playing shows. We had been going to other towns and playing shows in the Southeast as Hallows Eve, and people were accepting of it. But when we went to Europe, they didn't like that, what we did at all, with me on lead vocals, sometimes Skelly on lead vocals. He sang Plunging to Megadeth, but in like a black metal, not a screeching voice, but like a death voice. They didn't like it all. And I went, well, actually, if you really listen to Plunging to Megadeth, it's Warriors on Horseback. It kind of is a little 1 foot in death metal vocals. He is really a horse on it. And I go, I didn't think it was all that big of a stretch, but they did. They didn't like it. So we took it all back home, and I sat there and thought, this isn't it. I want it to be it, but it's not it.
Yeah. So was the record put out before that?
It was put out before that.
Okay, so for
No, it was not, because now I know it wasn't. Yeah, now I've got my act straight on that, because my good friend Jovita Kaminska, I hope I'm saying her name right. Um, she has the label Metal on Metal. She lives in Italy. She's at all the festivals in Germany and whatever like that. Great artist too. She's done she did Tempo of the Damned cover for Exodus and a couple of King Diamond things and stuff. So she's well known. Anyway, she actually took photos I think she was the official photo taker at that show for the festival. I got hold of her and she sent me photos of us, and that's what I used on the back cover for Evil Never Dies. That's how I know Evil Never Dies didn't come out until after. Right. I thought it came out before. But anyway, to me, it was all one big 4-year plan with those guys of doing stuff. And I thought it was perfectly normal to get up and do that show in front of everybody, because we've been doing it for a long time. And we did exactly the same thing we've been doing, where everybody went, yay. In Germany, they did not go, yay.
I think if maybe that happened now.
They looked at us like this. It was not like that scene in
Blues Brothers or something.
Where it was like when you had the chairs with all the paper plates with the frowny faces on it, sitting there looking at him.
Oh yeah,
and he goes, he's trying to play it. I'm gonna do a song for you now, and he goes, boo. That's what I felt like I was at that show. I'm sorry, they were great. I love Europe. I would love to play in Europe, but that show I learned a lesson. Don't go play unless you are fucking great.
Also, we're talking about like 2004, 2005. At this point in thrash metal, I feel like the people who were fans were so devoted at that point. Early 2000s. It was such a weird time for thrash metal.
It was, and also we're in Europe where people are we came on a little acting like Americans. We come on, I'm arranging myself and going, I yell at him to cut off the intro music. I'm ready to play. And I'm scratching my balls, and we don't have like people walking across the stage and dancers and people carrying broadswords, and we don't have all that. We're just us, and we're a little more earthy, I think, than the rest of the bands that day. There were some great bands that day, and not all of them had theatrics, but the 2 or 3 right before us did. And then we came out just going, hi, we're just us, spitting and whatever.
Well, I feel like at that time too, the people who were still around at that point were just so devoted and almost like maybe elitist in a sense. Because if you're that committed,
and you're thinking, this isn't Keep It True, and the theme of Keep It True is to be is old school,
to keep it true.
So I kind of had a debate with the owner of the show about that afterwards. I said, well, see, in my opinion, we kept it true because we always made it very clear from the get-go that in Hallows Eve, all our albums that we plan to progress, and that our albums from album to album will not sound the same. We talked about it in interviews, and we even said 10 years from now, our album 10 years from now will not sound like our first album, and we know that going into it. We know that we're going to try and stretch we have more things to say than make one album and be that over and over and over. So we wanted to do more. And so I felt like, yes, it sounds different. Yes, we're different. I did just what we said we were going to do. What's the problem? But that's not the theme so we were not really what needed to be at Keep It True. That lineup doing what we were doing did not need to be there.
Yeah. So what can you tell me about the writing and recording process of that record?
Evil Never Dies?
Of Evil Never Dies, yes.
It was very typical. It was just typical of most bands, I think. We came in, we jammed it out, learned the songs, went in the studio, and it was someone's house that had some equipment. We went in and sat down and just did the parts. we played. I think it's the first time that we had the drummer play with just one person and then laid the parts in one by one. Um, that was the first time that we did that. And to this day, most of the time, that's how I record people or myself. In fact, in Direwolf, we never learned the songs first. I've made the album, then we decide what we're going to play from it. So
Yeah.
I don't need anybody to be here. It's a two-piece band. I mean, that's way in the future of what we're talking about. But
I know I know what you mean, but it does connect to this, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Now
that was
different.
independent, right? Evil Never Dies.
Yeah. It was at first, and then Extreme Music picked it up from Spain. I had
Okay.
gone back to, after we left, after Stacy left, I had contacted Metal Blade with another lineup and sent a tape and asked them if they would, what do you think of this? And said, they told me Brian listened to it for about 60 seconds, got up and said, that's not Hallows Eve, and left the room. And I was like, man, I just cannot make a new Hallows Eve. I'm whipping this dead horse as hard as I can. And that's what it felt like. And I went on with it for a long time. But then we got invited to the Metal Blade 25th anniversary show.
And what year is this?
Okay, this is 2000. When was their 25th anniversary? Just count.
That's a good question. So this is between 5 and 8.
2006 or 2007 or 2008, right in there.
Okay, because the Never Ending Sleep came out in 2008. So
yeah, so this was like
before that.
This was just before that. So we got invited, and there was nobody staying around. I had basically fired everybody. I got rid of Steve. There was just too much drugs going on and stuff. So they said, one guy came to audition first, and he said the minute he was going to spend the night in the rehearsal room because he was from Alabama, he said the minute I left the room, every drug known to mankind came out because he knew that I was a no drugs guy. He said, man, when you left the room, it was ridiculous. He goes, everything you ever heard of came out. Everything. I said, I know it's there. I said, he goes, why do you put up with that? I said, because when I'm playing with them, if they do their job, they come on, they do the drum parts, they do the stuff, everything's good, the show is great. They can go off on their own time, and I don't care what they do. It's none of my business. I feel like it's none of my business what they do. They're not where I am doing what I do. But when you come play with me, it's everybody's straight. Everybody's doing it. But afterwards, you want to leave and go, I don't know. I don't care what you do. Go to China and do opium. I don't care. Just be back for practice next Thursday.
Exactly.
Straight.
Yeah.
That's how I felt about it then. I am not like that now. And shortly thereafter, after that next line of Hallows Eve, I was already directive, but now I became very directive after that. It is this way. It is this way. You will not do this. Put your right foot forward now. Now go for the left foot. What I.
Yeah, and you kind of have to have that. I feel like that's a good mindset.
I became that. Yeah.
Now, what can you tell me about that Metal Blade reunion?
That was awesome. Metal Blade reunion. So anyway, so I had heard that Stacy and Doyle Bright were actually living on one street over from each other. That Doyle Bright from Rigor Mortis were doing demos together. I heard them. I think Stacy contacted me and said, "Hey, have you heard our?" I'm like, "No, send it to me." I heard a song that sounded great, and I heard another one that sounded cool. They were calling themselves Two Prong Crown. And I don't think it ever played anywhere or did anything, but it made two really good. So I kind of said, "So you got Doyle over there, no, so and so," and he goes, "Yeah, I'm thinking Chris Abamani might come over and play with us." And I said, "I don't know these local guys. I'm out touring so much. I don't really know local people that much." And he said, "Well, he was in a car wreck last year, and they had to pull pieces of his shirt out of his torn up chest, and it was a Hallows Eve shirt." I said, "Oh, well, I like him now." yeah, he's a hardcore Hallows Eve fan. So anyway, I called him up and I said, "Look, me and Dane, I've still got a drummer. It's still me, and I'm looking for people to come in. people who can sing, but I said, we've been asked to play a Metal Blades thing. And I said, I can't think of anything better than call up you and Doyle sound great. I said, would you come and do this show with me? Me, you, Doyle, and this Chris dude. And I said, if you say he can play, then he can play. Because I know Stacy's pretty particular about it. He's just like me. He's pretty particular about it. He's not somebody who's just going to play with anybody. So anyway, we went over there and we had a couple of practices. I think we got to have 3 practices before it was time to go. And we went up there and they gave us a whopping 17 minutes to play. Now, you got to understand, it was 2 days of Metal Blade bands. So it started at noon all the way. So on the bill were Demi Borgir, Cannibal Corpse, Lizzie Borden,
Bitch, I assume.
Cowboy. This is the time of year it was. Walls of Jericho. God, it was everybody I never heard of. It just one after the other for 2 days, and all different kinds of metal. It just, so we were there in the middle of the afternoon at like 3 in the afternoon. We came on and we did 3 songs. It went pretty well. I was up in a stairwell, and as Brian walked by me, he turned around on the landing at one point. He turned around, he goes, we had just played. He turned around, he said, give me something to work with. Okay. And he walked off. And I went, so the door's not closed, even though we had actually asked out of our contract and had their lawyer send me a thing saying we're free. And I did like shop at Massacre Records, almost signed us. But I didn't do it. We didn't come to terms, and that was my fault. And I look back now and I think that was a huge mistake. But we had a really crappy lead singer at that time. I think we might have dodged a bullet. But on the other hand, that if we'd had a great new singer and had James on board and Massacre appealed to it at that time, boy, that would have been a band, and that was not a bad label to be on. But anyway, they let us go. But anyway, there he is saying, if you got something, doors open. And I'm like, so I go back and tell the guys, and they just kind of, yeah. I don't know. That lineup just didn't work out. We went off and we played together for about 4 years, and we did we did the Never Ending Sleep album. We all have, you can talk to any one of the 5 of us and you will hear an entirely different story. We cannot be on a conference call with each other. We were on a conference call with each other with some label one time. We didn't get 2 minutes in that conversation before people were talking about bringing the lawyers into it and everything else. This lineup could not even be in the room together or even talk to each other at all. There was so much stuff that happened. Me booking festivals that 2 days beforehand, somebody would cancel and not get on the plane because they didn't want to get germs or something. All kinds of crazy ass shit that I just said, I told them, guys, I can't be going around fucking people. I know these people. I will know them in the future too. And I am not going to go around and mess promoters up. I said, so I'm calling it today. It's October. I look, it's October the 29th. Almost Hallows Eve, October 31st, November 2nd. I said, how fitting. I said, I'm calling it now. 30 years to the day. Boom, we're done.
2013, right?
Yep. Because they had canceled 3 festivals in a row on me that involved plane tickets being provided and all kind of stuff. And the 3 in a row. And I went, no, I'm not going to go around and fuck people. I said, I'd rather not be in a band at all than to go around and make a mess of other people I said, I don't think y'all have any empathy at all. These guys are putting a lot of money into this. They're hiring people. They got to get sound people, PA, insurance for the show, perhaps. There's people who have bought tickets in other countries who have bought tickets to go. The tickets are already on sale. And now, a couple of days before, you go, nah, I don't want to go. No, you can't do that. You have to go. Anyway, it sucked. And I just finally called it a day and just said, I'm not doing it.
Now, before we end things, the Never Ending Sleep, I'd love for you to just get into that record in terms of the recording process. What was the creative chemistry between members for that?
All right. These were really good play. All these musicians are really good in this lineup. The drummer went on, and now he's basically a singer of Interstellar Overdrive is the name of his Pink Floyd tribute band. They're very well known.
Yes.
They're very well known. They play at big places, Laser Beam show and all that. He went on to that. Everybody is a good musician that's in this band. Doyle is not a slack ass. He's hard to get along with, in my opinion. Very hard. But that's me saying that. So maybe not to everybody else.
Yeah.
God, I can say so much about each person, but anyway.
Yeah, you don't have to, just the general writing process.
And they would do the same thing.
And you can say whatever you want, man.
If they're being courteous, they're gentlemen, they would probably just hold there and say, I'm just going to say didn't get along. But anyway, Joel basically recorded that album. In his, he got some studio equipment. It's down there in the rehearsal space, and it's one big open room. And the difference in this is now, the guys, we all came in one at a time. And I mean, we're not just recording one instrument at a time. We make sure not to show up on the same day. Except for Chris and I got along really well. So I would come, Chris is leaving. So I'm leaving practice and just recorded a bass track. I got my bass. I'm at the front door. Chris comes in and goes, "Oh, I'm here to record a rhythm track." And he says, "How did I sound?" And I said, "You sounded good." None of us are sitting around listening to the mixes. Doyle did it all. We're just coming in separately, different hours, different days. We don't even see each other anymore. And I think we got together once or twice after that for a practice and to argue, I guess, and go rant and rave. And I mean, there's an hour of practice and then 2 hours of ranting. So it turned into that. And I just said, I'm going away. I'll have to decide what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, man.
30 years. I feel like that's a good cap. And,
but I had done other bands. I had done other things. It wasn't like I was without other creative outlets.
100%. And still to this day, you run a label. And Tommy Stewart's Direwolf is fantastic. I know you do some Hallows Eve songs, which we did a podcast, the two of us, which you can listen to, where we talk about Black Duma Records.
Right on.
And Direwolf.
Duma Records is doing fine. We've had 18 bands I have a few bands, but they're all very carefully picked out and worked with, and I work with them on a promotion level real well. And now I have Black Duma Studio. I've produced a couple of the albums I did the last Grave Next Door album. Sorry. I think I've got a bunch of, I got involved in a lot of festivals because I really think in this time of day, a lot of people go off and do like 10 dates, club dates, and there's nobody there at a lot of them. And I go, I think we need to concentrate on the festivals. There's a lot of people at the festivals, 2-3 days at a time. And most of these I've got 7 I'm sponsoring. I got 5 right in front of me that I'm playing at. So Black Duma Records is coming to me. I got them all post-its in case we got to say them. And I'm more creative than ever. I've got Tommy Stewart's Direwolf. We're working on our 3rd album right now. And now I get to take my paintings. I was just shy before. So I take my paintings and they're out there to buy, as well as all the albums by Black Moon Call, Grave Next Door, Thunderbird Divine, and Screaming Mad D, Calhoun, and Tommy Stewart's Direwolf are all on the label. All that stuff's there. I want to show you a painting. So can you see it there? This is sort of a Van Gogh and a record. I do them on records.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's the kind of thing you'll get on the table. I'll also do some whimsical stuff. This is actually from hanging in my bathroom, but I'm doing another one to carry to festivals with me too. You like that?
For the people listening to just the audio, it's a cat looking around the corner, and it says, "Are you pooping?" Just some classic wall art.
So I got some. I'm going to start leaning more into those whimsical ones because I think people at festivals get a few beers in and they get a laugh out of it and go, "Yeah, I do want that. How much is that? $30. $30 for the big ones, $20 for the little ones."
And then they wake up the next morning and they're like, "Where the fuck did this come from?"
Yeah, why is there this thing about my cat poop? Or there's another one I want to make that has a similar thing in a cartoon bubble. I want to say, if you've sat down to poop, a cat or a dog will be with you in a moment, or something like that. I like making things like that. Those are awesome.
Now, Tommy, before we close the book, all right, and I already know the answer to this, I have to ask, do you ever see in the future another Hallows Eve record? I'm not asking for a tour. I think that's impossible at this point. or a
Oh
reunion
yeah,
show, but a
I don't
record,
think,
just an album.
no. I think I had to put it in my mind for creative internal reasons that that is done, and I have moved on, and I did fine moving on. I'm happier than I ever have been now. Working with other bands, taking what all I learned from there, all the mistakes, and then I learned from them, whatever like that. Now I can talk to a band that's say 25 years old or 35 or 45, and I can probably save them a lot of trouble by when they say the way we're doing it is blah blah. And I say stop. That's how that worked great 20 years ago. That's not how you do it now. Blah 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 blah. I just saved you guys 2 years of experimenting. Blah 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 blah. So I feel like I have value I can bring to the table now with all the experience and help other bands. I got to be very careful that they have their ideas of what they want to do, and I don't get involved in their creative vision. I just, if I like what they're doing, though, I'll just support it that all kinds of different ways. Get behind them on the promotion, set them up as best I can, try to integrate them with other bands they can gig swap with, and just I just love having the label. It's awesome. And you're so tuned into the scene. It's kind of like probably what you're doing. It's if you talk to all these different people, and I know you've talked to had interviews with all kinds of people, Bobby Liebling, David Ellison.
A
I remember
lot
that.
of like the new wave of thrash, that's why
Not a
I
Wave of
enjoy
Crash.
talking to to you. And by the time the band broke up the first time, I wasn't even born yet. So it's like
Right.
I'm in
So
this whole group, and there's this whole new wave of thrash now, where
there
thrash
is.
metal is like so popular.
It
So
is.
that's why I wanted to do this
I
initially,
don't think
because it's like just to archive the band's history, and for people like also
it
like you guys are
is
just excellent, like just excellent thrash metal from
those old
Hallows
I
Eve.
think now at this point, people getting any kind of a feel for me about what it was like for bands then, or people like me, is that we're just guys like everybody, and it was so different. So like if in 1985 I was listening to an interview with Glenn Miller about the Glenn Miller band or with orchestra or something, I guess that's kind of what it's like. It's like interviewing Jerry Lee Lewis at this point. I'm talking about stuff that went on 35 years ago. I'm
I
surprised I'm
think
around, honestly.
I think I saw something where it's like now to 80 was like what 80 was to, I don't want to say, I'm
The
terrible at math, but
Charleston,
it's like, yeah,
yeah,
you
like
know,
Flappers and the Charleston and the earliest pieces of swing jazz and whatever. It's yeah, it's
and
such a
so it's just
yeah.
like there's these legacy thrash metal bands that a lot of these like bands like Void, Morning High, um, there's so many great ones out now, and they're making a name for themselves. And bands like Hallows Eve and Forbidden and other legacy bands are really like influencing so many of these current bands. And it's cool to see, and it's awesome to learn about the band's history, because I know there's so many newer fans now that were never able to see the band. So to learn about these releases and the tours and all that was awesome. And Tommy, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you about this era and of your life and
Oh
the
man, thank
history of the
you,
band.
thank you. I'm glad. I'm appreciative and grateful we were able to make some kind of a mark that anybody cared about years later. And I don't know how many times people say they like something I did back then, and they go, and all I can say is thank you for listening. Thank you for still listening.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
that's never
I did not
changing.
expect
Yeah.
that.
And that's
It's
never
really nice.
changing. Hallows Eve, will ever be in the Hall of Fame of thrash metal, and you make amazing music still to this day. A lot of great. If you're into
I'm
doom
still
metal and
making an
heavy
album.
stuff, go listen to Tommy Stewart's Direwolf. Also,
Dude,
amazing
thank
label,
you.
great stuff on the label as well. And if you're a band, feel free to. I hope it's okay me saying this, but the
Oh yeah,
email blackdumarecords@gmail.com. I believe you can send demos and
I
contact the
get
label about whatever.
I get stuff every day, and I do listen to all of it. I do respond. As a matter of fact, I got one I got to listen to. I respond to everybody. I'm not going to be those labels and promoters that send you stuff that you just I don't know. We never heard from. I always send somebody. I send something. At least I say no.
Thank you.
But I'm gonna
Yeah.
I'm gonna answer. Yeah,
Well,
send me
awesome.
stuff. Who knows what's gonna happen? But
And I guess
yeah,
that's
great talking to
the
you.
book closing on Hallows Eve. And
Am I supposed
what
to
a great
am I
what a
supposed to
great
write a book
story that
now?
was.
Am I supposed to write a book
I
about
think
it?
that's the next. I think that's the next step. Well, hey, if that
Then
happens, this will be great promotion for that book, where you can really go more and more in detail about some of these
I'm thinking
stories.
about it. We'll
And I say, let's end things off right here. Tommy, again, thank you so much for being on the
thank you.
podcast and talking about the band's history. I'm Brandon Battick, and this has been Disturbing the Priest.
It's death! I've just seen death!